So with WWE Clash of the Castle in the rearview mirror, we've got Forbidden Door on the horizon, and of course, Money in the Bank is coming up as well. You guys got a lot to talk about in the world of pro wrestling, and this is WrestleJuice Hot Takes. Let's go ahead and dive into it really quick though. First, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button and the notify bell. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you like what you see. Let's go ahead and dive right into them. XX Wrestling 07 says Finn Balor should win Money in the Bank. All right, so at some point I'm probably going to be doing one of those ranking people who should win Money in the Bank this year for both the men and the women. I'll probably do that next week. But let's go ahead and tackle this right now and look at some storyline possibilities in terms of who should win Money in the Bank. I like this idea a lot. This has sort of been something that Larson and I have discussed over at the Going in Raw podcast, but the more I think about it, the more I like it. Let's go ahead and eliminate a couple things. First up, let's eliminate anybody on SmackDown winning, because if you think about it, Cody Rhodes holding that undisputed championship, I'm reasonably sure that he's not going to drop it until The Rock shows up and takes it off him, or maybe it'll be like a solo Sikoa with the bloodline thing. I'll kind of believe that one when I see it, but I feel like Cody losing it to somebody big is going to be the thing, and it's not going to be for a very long time. Although I really like the idea of AJ Styles taking it off him, it's not going to happen. Randy Orton is going to be one of his next opponents. That was made clear at the Clash of the Castle, and Randy Orton sort of gawked at it while he was next to Cody Rhodes. Solo Sikoa's out there, so I don't know. It seems like they're building up to a bloodline situation where either The Rock, maybe even Roman Reigns, I don't know who, is going to be taking that title off of Cody Rhodes. And maybe he'll survive all that and he'll carry it for a couple of years. I don't know. It seems kind of obvious to me, though, that it's not going to be somebody on SmackDown, or if it is, they're not going to cash it in until they do like another draft and they end up over on Raw, which is a possibility. So that leaves us with the roster for Monday Night Raw. There's a lot of people there. This is what I like about Finn Balor. Right now, they're building this Judgment Day storyline around Damian Priest's World Heavyweight Championship. Now, I know he's got Gunther coming up at SummerSlam. That's a guaranteed shot because of the King, Queen of the Ring thing. And then, of course, there's Bash in Berlin, where Gunther is going to be there as well. Well, as we've seen 2 times in a row now at Clash of the Castle, just because a guy is from the general vicinity of a premium live event doesn't mean he's not going to get royally screwed out of a world title opportunity. And so it wouldn't shock me, at this point, it would not shock me to see Damian Priest beat Gunther at SummerSlam, maybe with help from the Judgment Day, and then maybe even again at Berlin. Hell, maybe Finn Balor wins Money in the Bank, cashes it. I think it's kind of obvious that, number one, given that Finn Balor totally had that La Chateau hotel key from Liv Morgan on that last Raw we saw, I think and he's been seen coming out of the car with her. He's been talking to her. It kind of seems obvious at this point that Finn Balor and Liv Morgan are in cahoots in some way, shape, or form. It seems like Finn probably doesn't like being squeezed out of those tag titles because Priest wasn't interested in that anymore. He just had that title and that was his priority. And so Finn Balor's on the outside looking in. He recently re-signed with the company for probably a lot of money. And Triple H has always liked Finn Balor. I could totally see him winning Money in the Bank. Otherwise, if you look at the bigger stories on Raw, you've got, I don't know, maybe like a dark horse candidate like a Braun Breaker, if they really like the direction he's going in and they think that within a year he can get to the point where he could cash in on who's ever holding the title. They have been bringing up recently on television that both Ilya and Braun have beat Gunther, so maybe him and Ilya make some amount of sense for that Money in the Bank briefcase. I could see that as well. But in terms of where Triple H's priorities are, look at the A storyline on Raw, the one that isn't now Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. It's the Judgment Day. And so it kind of stands to reason that whoever is going to be taking that title off of Damian Priest, he could very well be a member of Judgment Day. And as much as I would love for it to be Dom Mysterio, I could easily see Finn Balor getting that. It's going to be really interesting over the next year to see how they book that World Heavyweight Championship. Obviously, Triple H really likes Damian Priest. The world title run for him so far has, besides the, first, his actual cash in, it seems like they've been trying to figure out exactly what he's going to be. Is he going to be a good guy? Is he going to be a bad guy? I mean, as we saw, obviously, they gave us the visual idea in our head that Drew McIntyre had him down for the count if it wasn't for the ref bump, but doesn't matter. Damian Priest still walked out as champion. So if you look at the landscape of everybody else, Finn Balor's a former Universal Champion, former Intercontinental Champion, former Tag Team Champion, former NXT Champion. The guy's got the credentials, and I think a lot of people would be super cool with him cashing in on Damian Priest. I think it'd be pretty interesting. I think it'd be, Raw is that big ensemble show. You obviously, and as we've seen this with Damian Priest, you don't need the top guy in the company to be on that show as champion. I kind of feel like Drew McIntyre / CM Punk, even to a degree Sami Zayn, who's Intercontinental Champion, has been featured more prominently than Damian Priest, and it still works. I really enjoy Raw for, what it's worth. So yeah, Finn Balor winning Money in the Bank. I would love to see it. I think that would be awesome. I'm all about it. Let me know you guys want to see win Money in the Bank in the comments below. Let's go into the next hot take. Tony the Pokemon guy says Obafemi is how Wardlow should have been booked like the minute he beat MJF. Wardlow is probably the biggest missed opportunity, biggest drop ball since of the last 24 months, the last 2 years. I'd say Wardlow is the biggest drop ball because that was about 2 years ago, wasn't it? That him and MJF had that big match. I think it was 2022. Yeah, man. Look, I don't know about the Obafemi thing, but I kind of agree with that. I think Wardlow was crazy because they had that big thing with MJF and he showed all of his personality. He was like, man, this guy is really something else. And then immediately after that match, which was sort of had a black cloud over it anyways because of all the MJF contract renegotiation stuff, they dumped Wardlow into a lawsuit angle and it killed him immediately. And there's been several attempts to regain that momentum and they've never worked. Look at him. Where is he now? He's not on television anywhere to be found. He's supposed to be with the Kingdom. He hasn't been on TV for a little while. Maybe he's injured. If he is, that's, I guess, on me for not knowing that. But, yeah, Wardlow's a crazy case because he really had a ton of momentum to become sort of, if you want to call it a pillar, like a fifth pillar of AEW, or I guess that'd be Britt Baker, the sixth pillar of AEW, one of the new pillars of AEW. And they completely and totally dropped the ball. And you'd think that his booking would be pretty simple, especially given storyline-wise, he wasn't actually a contracted member of AEW until after that MJF match. So he could have sort of started from the bottom because I think at the time they were still kind of doing the rankings thing. You didn't need to put him in the world title scene immediately. He could have been, like he's saying here, like Obafemi. I'm pointing at my phone because that's where I'm reading the things from. He could have been like Obafemi and just been like a dominant force, sort of climbing the ladder in there in AEW, and then you could have pulled the trigger on the guy as a world champion if you give him, a pretty sustained run as whatever, TNT champion or whatever like that. But it was always start and stop with him. Really strange situation there with Wardlow, but it is what it is. Paper Bag Man says Ricochet would perform better in TNA than in AEW. The amount of wrestlers within TNA can lead to possible classics. Plus, he could be a major player in the X Division. All right, so if Ricochet went to TNA, there's no way he'd be doing anything but competing for the world title. Let's just get that out of the way. All right, he wouldn't be an X Division guy. Look, Ricochet he's a walking awesome match machine. I believe that. I'm really interested to see. Number one, if he does leave WWE, because I don't know that's certainty. But number two, the amount of dream matches out there for him are plentiful. I don't think that going to TNA would be the most beneficial thing for him. Number one, if this TNA WWE partnership becomes more fruitful, then okay, you can rule out any matches in AEW or probably New Japan And in my opinion, seeing him in the G1, seeing him wrestle any number of people there at All In Wembley, including most obviously Will Ospreay, that's what I want to see. I mean, look, I know it's a cheesy catchphrase. AEW says we're the best wrestler, but the thing about AEW is it is the place where they put the most heavy emphasis on the performance of the wrestlers, to a degree sometimes where it seems like the wins and losses don't actually matter there anymore. They just want to have awesome matches, which is fine. There's obviously an audience for that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I just think that that environment is probably best for Ricochet because he's that guy. And I want to see him sort of, I don't know, unbound by the storytelling stuff with WWE, which really, if you don't have a character in WWE, then you're up shit's creek. So I think with Ricochet, he's probably best off in AEW because it does open so many doors, if you will, to a bunch of other promotions. And these days, it seems like TNA's a bit more on the limiting side. I mean, we're going to get Ricochet versus Nick Nemeth. Ricochet versus, I mean, look, I get it. Speedball Mike Bailey's there, and that's awesome. You got Chris Bay there, Ace Austin. Like, I get that there's plenty of people there, and they've got, like, Josh Alexander. They've got some great wrestlers, but it's like, I don't know, one promotion. If he goes to AEW, you're opening up all of AEW and potentially New Japan as well. And on top of that, CMLL. There's a lot. And there's a lot of history that he already has in AEW. So, I don't know. Look, I support whatever the dude wants to do. I think that's awesome for him. I just think AEW is probably the place for him, but to each their own. DJ Mott says Solo Sikoa taking over the Bloodline has been one of the best slow building stories in the Triple H era. He's taken Roman's example of how to run things and twist it in the best way for his character. This is one of those that people seem to be pretty torn on, the whole concept of Solo Sikoa. I saw somebody refer to him as like a generic wannabe weekend cosplayer. I don't know. I'm sort of waiting to see how this is all going to play out. I like what they're doing so far. I don't know if Solo's got the weight, if he's got the presence to be real. This is why I really honestly think that Solo Sikoa is still just a lieutenant for the final boss. I think whenever he tells Paul Heyman that he's been in contact with the tribal chief, when he's been in contact with Roman Reigns, what he really means is, I've been talking to The Rock. Throw your L's up. The Wallinator 74 says the most memorable part of CM Punk's 434-day title reign is that it was 434 days long. Nobody cares about or even remembers any of the matches, feuds, or storylines he had during that run. This is totally true. Because I looked this up just the other day. And yes, the best, probably, for just looking at the 434-day run. Not because if you guys remember, he got cashed in on by Alberto Del Rio. And so he won the title. So the Money in the Bank 2011 thing does not include the 434 days. Then he wins it back. And then he's got matches. If you look at his cage match, like if you look at all the stories and stuff, dude was feuding with like Jack Swagger, The Miz, Dolph Ziggler. It is not an impressive lineup at all. Like at all. It wasn't until he dropped that promo against The Rock where he said, what is it? I'm a god on the microphone, or I'm a god in the ring, or whatever he said. He said, how do you can't box with God? Something like that. It was cool. It was awesome from what I remember. And then he loses the title. Had they allowed CM Punk to make that Rock Cena match a triple threat, which I understand, Cena's got to get his win back directly from The Rock. But you kind of negate the whole idea that it's once in a lifetime, because then at that point, it's twice in a lifetime. I always thought it'd be cool to put CM Punk in there as a triple threat, but I get why they did it. Maybe they could have revisited Rock versus Cena a year later, but whatever. There was an awesome promo, and it was really cool stuff that he had with The Rock. But that was kind of it. That was over a year later. That was 30 days later anyways, because that was the end of that run when Rock beat him for the title. Yeah, that run, look, the guy, CM Punk was always the wrestler to leave everything in the ring. So for all I know, and I don't remember much about it, For all I know, those matches were awesome. But I don't remember any of those stories. I don't. And maybe you can load up the comments and be like, oh man, you don't remember this? No, not really. Look at these matches. We had Big Show, Sheamus, Ryback, more Big Show, more Ryback. Yeah, no, man. None of this is good. He fought Jerry Lawler on Monday Night Raw. Diehard Homer says Ring of Honor is as influential to wrestling as was ECW. Yeah, I actually agree with this one. I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with this. If you look at who went through Ring of Honor and then how that sort of played out in terms of like, I mean, look at AEW. The whole reason AEW exists is because of things like Ring of Honor, NXT, which NXT kind of exists because of Ring of Honor as well. So yeah, I mean, in terms of ECW's influence, I'm not going to say that it was nothing because clearly ECW influenced WWE's 1996, 1997 Attitude Era stuff. I guess 1997 Attitude Era stuff. So yeah, and then that became like the biggest thing. So taking a more contemporary approach to your storytelling, you know, allowing yourself to get a bit more edgy, a bit more salacious, whatever, ECW had a strong influence on that. But on today's wrestling, I see much more of a Ring of Honor influence than I do ECW. I do. We'll end on this one. Josh Tiley says the McGriddle is mid. Have you had one? They're amazing. That's going to do it for Hot Takes, everybody. Do me a solid. Hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe and the notify bell. We'll see you guys around.